Oh, I'm actually surprised to hear you say that. When Obama gave his acceptance speech at the end of the primaries, that was where I really paid close attention. I mean, I really, really watched. I watched his body movements, the way he spoke, everything he did during that speech, and I came away absolutely clear that he is a 100% Marxist in the spirit that if Karl Marx was the professor, he would give him an A+. And so, personally, I'm not at all surprised at what I see from Obama. But you raise an issue, and I want to spend a little time on it, and it's the issue of the so-called war on terror. The great boogeyman word of the language is now terrorism, and it's used to justify almost anything. And what is your view, being a former agent, what is your view on how terrorism and the so-called war on terror has been used? In my opinion, it doesn't seem to be being used to go after people who are harming innocents. It seems to me that it's being used to further control the people who the government is actually supposed to protect. So what is your view as a former agent on this cloudy subject of terrorism?
Well, I kind of agree with you, and I probably agree with you very close to 100%, that basically the people who favor big government, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, have exploited the word terror and terrorism every time you turn around, and they've used this primarily to suppress the civil liberties and the rights of the American people, and indeed people all around the world. I think that this has been the pattern that we've seen. Terrorism has been exploited. And I was delighted yesterday when the Patriot Act renewal was voted down in the U.S. Congress. That is the first victory in a long time for civil rights and civil liberties to keep the FBI from being able to get into your private records.
Well, let me interrupt you there because I'm going to wet your blanket. I'm going to rain on your parade. All they actually did was they voted down a procedural vote that would have allowed them to circumvent a floor vote on the issue. That's all they did. It will come up to a floor vote, and it will pass because they had a very big majority. But the procedural vote required a supermajority, and they didn't get it. So all it means...
Ah, okay.
Yeah. I know everybody's come to me today, and they said, oh, yeah, isn't this great? And I hate to rain on your parades. But no.
Yeah, well... You probably have it more right than I do. Yeah, I was pretty impressed by it because it's the first time that anybody has voted against Patriot Act or military commissions or any of these laws that basically have stripped us of our rights. And so I was kind of delighted.
Well, see, that raises a question. Now, I understand more than I'd care to. I understand the nature of the bureaucracy, and it's a big automated chain of command, and so the cogs in it are expected to do certain things and nothing else, and it keeps the bureaucracy controllable by those on the top tiers. I understand all of that, and I understand that's what makes it almost impossible to do anything when you're on the inside. But I know that there are people in very, very high positions of political power who I can't believe everyone in those positions, okay, has totally and completely abandoned the principles of the United States of America or the basic fundamental international principles. I find it hard to believe that everybody has this might makes right thug type, let's go invade mindset. Now, am I just being idealistic or... what's going on? Well, you were on the inside. Did you find everyone around you, was just, oh yeah, let's just invade, because we're bigger than they are. Let's go beat everybody up. Did you find this rule the world attitude among your colleagues? And if not, where have the people in power gone who still share some of these values?
Okay, the simple answer to this is that there's not a simple answer. That there are a lot of people in government who question specifically the issues that you're raising. And the problem is when you're inside the system, you can't voice these concerns. Now, when people get up to an upper level, they suddenly have other issues. And the other issues are basically staying in power, continuing to have a high level of authority, And they view these things as trade-offs that you have to continue because there are certain constituencies, very highly financed, moneyed constituencies, powerful constituencies that want to see these systems stay in place. So they see it as a trade-off that, you'll have a nice, intelligent person like me in a high position in the government, and I'm very sensitive and I'm very concerned, but I think we have to vote this law through because that will mean that we won't get any trouble on other things we try to do. That's the compromises that people in high levels in government go through. But the fact is that, people in government are basically no more stupid than the average person out on the street, and they understand that a lot of American interests are being sold down the river and a lot of liberties have been sacrificed over the last 10 years. But the fact is the system goes on and it continues to do things in ways that make it very difficult for individuals to do anything to stop.
Are you saying, in effect, that there is no hope for changing what has become this system?
No, I'm not saying that because I think there is hope in that the American public in general and the Tea Parties, I think, are a symptom of this, are sensitive to the fact that government has gotten too big, too intrusive, and too expensive. And you have to exploit those concerns. And now here's the tricky part. You have to link those concerns to our foreign policy. Now that's the hard part because many of the people who are supporters of smaller government, less intrusive government, and cheaper government are also people that are kind of blue collar and they have a simplistic view of what the threats are that are out there against the United States. So you have to educate them into understanding that it is specifically and precisely this corrupt and awful foreign policy that's driving a lot of things inside the government that they don't like. And that's the job of people like you, I think, and people like me. We have to get the story out there.
Now, you know as well as I do that when we go out and we tell stories about things that people have believed were different for so many years, they look at us like, we came from the moon. What are you, crazy or nuts? This is our government. They're here to help us. To what degree do you encounter that, and how do you overcome that? You personally, and how do you recommend others overcome that wall of ignorance?
Well, there are two ways to do it that I kind of exploit or work on. The one thing that everybody understands is that it's expensive, that this has cost us a lot of money, that the war in Iraq, according to some economists, is going to cost us $5 trillion before it's all over, that we're paying 6 times more to support Afghanistan and give it the security than the economic activity of the whole country generates in a year. These are issues that Americans can understand because it comes out of their pockets. And I think the other thing to understand is that it has made us less secure. The United States is hated everywhere in the world right now because it's a bully. And the United States is more subject to people saying they would like to see suicide bombers attack it and so on and so forth than has ever been the case. So you have to emphasize that the security has gotten worse, which is something everybody understands, and you have to emphasize that what's paying for this, it's all coming right out of their pockets.
And I have to tell you, I know people who have traveled internationally, and when they are asked, they say they're from Canada because they're afraid of identifying themselves as U.S. citizens because they're afraid how they will be treated.
That's right. I mean, basically the war on terror has made every American citizen less safe. And it's made us less safe because it's basically been an indiscriminate operation where the United States has been going around and telling everyone what they have to do. And anybody can understand that. You have to put it in terms that people understand and that people will relate to. I don't deny it's an uphill struggle. And I've talked to groups, I'm sure you've talked to groups, and you have to say, look, at a certain point, what you've been fed by the media and what you've been fed by the government is BS, and that's really what it is.
Yeah, but there's so much of that out there. How do you sift through and figure out what's really going on? That's the problem. Because, okay, if I can't trust them, who can I trust?
Yeah, well, that's right. I think you have to tell them, look, you guys know that government's too big, that it's too expensive, that it's too intrusive. Now, figure out why it got that way. And you have to make the arguments, you have to track it back. I'm not saying it's easy to make these arguments, and I understand that, anytime they open a newspaper, they're going to be reading something that's contrary to what you and I are saying. But the fact is that we have to make the effort, because if we don't make the effort, in about 2 years' time, we're going to have a situation in this country where, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and everything we'll never be able to recover these things. Now it's there are tipping points, and there are people saying, this doesn't seem quite right, and I think we have to turn it around, and the best way we can do that is to be as visible and as vocal as we can be, making the arguments.
Which leads to my ultimate question, which is, do you believe, and I ask a lot of my guests this question, do you believe the American people will rise up and resist, will create some kind of uprising against government, and in particular, not just the old-timers, but the youth of the United States? Do you think that we're going to have an uprising?
No, we're not going to have an uprising, but I think we can have a shift, a tectonic shift that will be big enough that will affect a lot of these policies. And my feeling about the American youth is very positive. Having been involved with the Ron Paul campaign and also with the Rand Paul campaign, the young people have been a major part of these efforts. And I find when I write for sites like the Ron Paul site, Campaign for Liberty, which you're probably familiar with, the response from young people who are out there watching these situations, they're way ahead of the elders. They understand very well that their futures are being sold out here. So I have a lot of confidence in young people in general in the world, and particularly in the United States. And I think that all these situations are still reversible. But if we don't do it in the next couple of years, that might not be the case.
How can people follow your columns and your reports? I know that you gave me the American Conservative website. Is that where they find you?
Well, the American Conservative website is where I've been writing for the longest time, for about the past 6 years, and you can search on that, and you can pull up a lot of my articles and pieces. But antiwar.com is probably a better resource. It's a place where I write every single week a feature article. And you can, again, pull up articles and pieces there. And then the Campaign for Liberty, the Ron Paul website, is another resource. I've been writing regularly for that.
All right, so just to give them out again, it's Campaign for Liberty. I don't have that website in front of me, but you can find it. Also, antiwar.com. And then the American Conservative is www.amconmag.com. amconmag.com. Philip Giraldi, I want to thank you so much. We'll have these websites up and links on our website by the end of the week. And thanks so much for spending this time with us. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me on.
It's been a pleasure.